Hey, it's Conrad the Mortgage Guy, and you're listening to 83 Weeks with Eric Bischoff. Eric, what's going on, man?
I don't know, man. I got chill bumps all over listening to that music, seeing that open. Oh my god, it was so awesome.
You like that?
The music, it just puts me in the mood. You know, I mean, you talk about mood music. I'm going to be walking up and down the streets of downtown Cody doing this thing here. It's just too awesome.
Well, hang on now. Wait a minute. Am I seeing the top of a shirt right there? Don't stand
up.
Oh,
yeah.
Now, hang
on.
Isn't
that appropriate? Look at that.
Okay. How about that? 83weeksmerch.com. Go grab yourself an Eazy-E shirt right now. And we are celebrating 30 years of Nitro right now. We've got a special collection. 30 years of Nitro upon us. Go grab yourself some Nitro 30 gear. T-shirts, sweatshirts, stickers, and more. All available right now for a limited time only at 83weeksmerch.com. And when they're gone, they're gone. They won't be here for life. Go check them out. Eric, we are excited for today's show because we got a lot of fun stuff planned. We are going to be talking about Nitro from 1995. We're also going to be talking about why the nWo failed in the WWE. We've spent years talking about why it worked here in WCW, but why didn't it work with WWE? We'll talk about that. We'll also hear from Raj Giri, who's got some late breaking news, I guess, about where we are with streaming services. We'll talk about John Cena's retirement tour, but we're going to double down on the nostalgia today. But before we do that, I can't help but notice there's been a lot of announcements about Real American Freestyle since last week. We know the next event is Penn State University, October 25th. Make plans to be there in person. I'm planning to be there in person. Penn State's great this time of year, by the way. I saw Alabama play them years ago there. What a really, really fun time I had. I can't wait to see this, but you've got a lot of talent announced here, Eric. What can we expect from Real American Freestyle?
Well, we're, as we did in at the very first Real American Freestyle back in on August 30th in Cleveland, bringing some of the absolutely elite freestyle wrestlers in the world. And this time we're bringing it to Penn State. And Penn State is like, kind of right now it's, I don't want to call it the mecca of the amateur wrestling universe, but it's a pretty powerful place to be if you're in the collegiate wrestling world. So we're excited to bring it there. One of the athletes, we've got a whole card full of great athletes. I won't run through them now, but Mason Paris. Mason was at RAF1, and he almost competed because of some issues we had with the Pentagon and Wyatt Hendrickson and just timing issues. But we got all that worked out, so we didn't have to see Mason. But Mason Paris is going to be there. Kyle Dake, it's going to be a big night. Some of the best athletes in the world. And you're going to see it if you're not in that State College, Pennsylvania area around Penn State, you can watch it on Fox Nation. So check it out.
Hey, I signed up for Fox Nation. I'll admit I didn't have that app prior to Real American Freestyle, but it's like $8 a month. I'm not missing it. You shouldn't either. This is not a pay-per-view opportunity. It's on Fox Nation. It's included with everything else on the streaming service. You're going to be blown away with Real American Freestyle. I was too. The next event, be a part of history, October 25th, Penn State University. It's going to be a blast. Eric, speaking of a blast, I'm looking forward to getting your take on this news that I guess deadline.com broke earlier this week. If you're not familiar, that's a Hollywood trade, if you will. They cover all the big stories, including Kenan Thompson's production company called Artists for Artists is now developing a biopic or biopic, however you want to say it today, about the Macho Man Randy Savage. This is awesome news for big wrestling fans. And we know a few years ago you were working on a Hulk Hogan project, but have you ever even heard of a Randy Savage project? This is kind of exciting to me as a wrestling fan.
No, this is news for me. I've been a little bit out of the loop, kind of heads down some other stuff, but this is news. The first time hearing it, I think it's great. And you know what? I don't know if it's biopic or biopic either. And I figured I'd learn which one it was, just dancing around Hollywood and pitching deals from time to time. But even in Hollywood, these people are in this business every day. Some of them it's biopic, some of them it's biopic. I'm going to go with biopic just because it's easier for me to remember for whatever reason. I think it's going to be great. I love documentaries, biopics, take your pick, because you get so much deeper. You really learn so much more than you do in a typical scripted drama or feature. So I really am looking forward to this. I think Randy's had such an interesting life, interesting family life. His father, in the Angelo Poffo in the business with his brother, just a lot of story there. And I think in the right hands, the right storytellers who spend a lot of time doing the research necessary to make something like this really feel alive. If they can do that, Randy's a great subject, and the audience will love it.
Hey, Eric, I do want to ask, a lot of us have never worked in Hollywood. You have. So when a report like this comes out, that a project like this is in development, I don't necessarily want to set the false expectation. I think a lot of fans are immediately going to say, well, when does it come out? This is really announcing that they're just starting that sort of thing. What are the odds this even happens? And hypothetically, if we did see it come to fruition, when do you think there actually might be a product for us to look at? Is that next year? Is it years from now? Set a realistic expectation in that regard.
I'm no expert, but I would say, meaning I'm not in the business every day, but from, hey, I got an idea, let's do that idea, let's call our PR firm and get a headline in Variety or Deadline or wherever. From that point to tickets on sale to go see it tomorrow night, minimum 2.5 years. Now, if there's already a director in place and there's already a script in place and you've got your writer, well, you'd have to have your writers to have a script, but if you've got your director, that's usually the first big announcement, because nothing else really meaningful happens till after you get a director. You don't go out and hire a writer and then a director generally. It's kind of both those things like to happen around the same time, or at least get your director in place first, because the director really has so much control over the finished product, right? Including agreeing and deciding upon casting, for example. They usually have a lot, if not 100%, to say about who's going to be writing the movie. If you bring a director on, there's already a script, guess what? The script's going to change. So usually the first real announcement isn't like, hey, we got an idea. It's, hey, we've got an idea and here's our director. That's when you take it pretty seriously, especially if the director is a well-known director, because then everything else kind of falls into place afterwards. But even that, if there was a director in place and a writer in place, I can't imagine it happening less than 2 years.
I do want to ask you, Eric, the report is that I guess the original script for this was written by his brother Lanny, who unfortunately is no longer with us. Do you think is there a chance that we get, I don't know, a different version of the story because it's from Lanny? Sometimes people,
I guarantee you will. Conrad, I don't even know. I have no idea what I'm talking about, specifically about this deal, but I bet you what I'm about to say is right, and I'd bet a lot of money on it. That script was out. I don't know where who's in charge of Lanny's estate. Don't know. But if the production company, Artists for Artists, said, hey, there's a script available and the rights that go with it, let's buy the script. Once you buy the script, you can change the script. Once you buy the script, you can throw the script away and write a new script because the rights come with it. So the value wasn't in Lanny. Lanny was a friend, so I'm not being judgmental here. Certainly didn't see the script. But chances are, since Lanny wasn't a film writer, script writer, it was probably a good idea and an interesting idea, but that script would be completely overhauled by a director and a writer. So what if Artists for Artists purchased that script? What they were really purchasing was the rights that came with it, more than the words that were on the 97 pages that were a part of the script.
I appreciate that. I think that's something that a lot of us who hear this news wouldn't have considered. I know you're not involved with the project, and I'm putting you on the spot here, but we know that once upon a time you had Mr. Hemsworth lined up to play Hulk Hogan.
Mhm.
Hypothetically, who would make a good Randy Savage? Is there somebody even out there you look and you think, hey, that guy might be able to pull it off?
That's a cool thing about Randy is, Hulk was larger than life. Other
Yes.
than Chris Hemsworth, who's going to play Hulk Hogan,
Right.
right? So that's a cool thing about Randy because Randy was my height. I'm 5'10" and a half technically. Um, Randy might have been 5'11" and a nickel, maybe, but he wasn't 6'4", 6'5", 6'6". That gets a little hard to find actors that are good that are that big because most actors are generally pretty small. Tom Cruise, you could pick him up, put him in your pocket, take him for a walk. He's a little fella. A lot of leading men are actually quite average or smaller than average. So when you get bigger, your roles are harder to find. But with Randy, he's, you could find physically, you could find a lot of actors that could physically play Randy with a little help. Good trainers, you know what I mean? And he's got that voice, man. Anybody who knows anybody, you know what I mean? He's not a hard voice to figure out. So I think that opens a door to potentially a lot of great actors. I wouldn't be able to, start throwing names around because I'm not in that world, but I just would believe there's a lot of good actors that are out there that could nail that role.
One of the things I've had to kind of think about is how interesting would this story be from a mainstream perspective? And I think pretty interesting when you consider that, it's the family story because we know how close he was with his dad and his brother and his reluctance to just go right into the family business. Instead, he pursues a baseball dream. That's Americana as it gets. Then he falls back into, the family business. And somewhere along the way, he meets the love of his life, and that has a tragic end. And there's this love story attached to it as well. And then a tragic ending. It does kind of feel like this is a made for Hollywood story, but I've never even really considered that. Do you think if this movie gets made and if it has the success that we hope that everything that Kenan Thompson does, because we're big Kenan Thompson fans around here, no relation. I don't know if you could tell, but just a guess. Um, do you think that the success of a Savage film may lead to renewed interest in a Hogan film?
Well, there was a lot of interest in the Hogan film. It was really unfortunate, and I've never talked about this, right? Um, I I won't go through the whole deal making process and how it all came to be. It's too long and not really that interesting. But I've ended up talking to Scott Silver, who's a writer for Todd Phillips, who is the director. Um, got them excited. So Todd Phillips is a huge wrestling fan and a major, major, major Hulk Hogan fan. Couldn't wait to do the movie, right? Scott Silver was a writer who worked with Todd. They were like a partner, writer-director partnership, still are. They did the last two Batman movies, for example. Todd Phillips did a lot of other really successful stuff. So to the point we were talking about earlier, A-list director, Todd Phillips at that point in time was probably one of the, if not the hottest director in Hollywood. He was making the most money and putting out the best films. Scott Silver, same category as a writer, which made it easy. There was no way I could get Chris Hemsworth. That wouldn't happen. But because Todd Phillips was attached and Scott Silver was attached and committed to the film, it made it. Their agents went out and was able to get Chris Hemsworth, right? Just because of the quality of the director, made even approaching someone like Chris Hemsworth possible. And of course, he jumped on. Scott Silver wrote the script. It took about a year and a half. I worked with Scott on and off in developing the script. Hulk loved the script. I mean, loved it. Scott Silver told me it was the best script he's ever written at that point. And the one he was most proud of and was most excited to make. Todd Phillips couldn't wait to make the movie. Now, remember, everybody got excited. Chris Hemsworth jumps on board. Variety does a big press thing. Story comes out, supposedly leaked. I don't think it was. I think there was an agent involved, but hey, what do I know? Everybody knows it's coming, it's coming, it's coming. COVID hits. Shuts down the film industry worldwide. Nobody's shooting movies under COVID. That put everything behind 2 years. All of the things that were in pre-production when COVID landed, all of a sudden got put on ice. All of the stuff that was in the middle of production, a lot of it, they ended up figuring out a way to do it in post with CGI and other computer animation because you couldn't put actors on a set. And that put a absolute stop on the Hogan film. Now, while we're stopped down because of COVID, the clock is ticking on Hulk's deal. Netflix wrote a sizable check to Hulk for the option for his rights. That option was a 2-year option, I believe. I never saw the contract, so I'm just going by what I think, not by what I know. There was a 2-year option. Well, that movie got delayed and stayed delayed right up to the point where we were right up against, Netflix was right up against, they had 24 hours or less to get a check to Hulk in order to retain their option for another year or two or whatever it was. They missed the date by 12 hours. Technically, they were in breach, or they weren't able to extend the length of the deal, which means that was the end of the movie. Now, it begs the question, why? Why, if Hulk, we had Chris Hemsworth, one of the hottest actors, box office at the time, Todd Phillips, A-list director, one of the top, if not the top at the time, Scott Silver, same, Hulk Hogan, great script. Hulk changed his mind. And the reason I found out subsequently, actually recently, was Hulk really wanted to not only re-engage or further engage, but to maintain a long-term relationship with WWE. That was what was in his best interest, and in the best interest of his brand, in his opinion. Because as much as Hulk loved that script, it was edgy. There were things in that script that certain people would not be happy to see. Not dirt, not, nothing, nothing that one would normally expect to come out in a movie, but the way certain people were positioned, the way stories were positioned, the perspective that was going on at the time, there would have been some people that may have taken exception to it. And Hulk just didn't want to take the risk. He didn't see the upside in doing the movie to be worth the risk of putting himself into an off-balance relationship with WWE because of the movie and how certain people were portrayed in the movie. So Hulk just said, long term, I'm just going to let the movie go away. And he did. It's really unfortunate because I actually have one of the few copies of the script that exist, and it's a great script. It's absolutely fantastic. My opinion, it would have put Hulk on the map even further. It would have just catapulted him even further than he is now. And as far as his concerns about how other people would have taken it, we disagreed on that point. But nonetheless, we'll never see that movie. And do I think we'll see another one? I doubt it. I don't know. I don't know where Hogan's head is at, or Sky, Hulk's now widow. I don't know where their heads are at. on this, but it's a rights issue. And I don't see it happening. I don't see a writer or director going, hey, I know that thing almost got off the ground last time with Todd Phillips and Scott Silver, and it didn't work out. So let's us take a try. Oh, and that Netflix thing, in the budget that they had for that movie, it was a budget. I don't see somebody coming along and saying, man, let's us give that a try. But maybe, you never know. Things change so fast. Anything can happen.
Eric, can we, I don't know, so forgive my ignorance, I'm just asking, but since the movie's not going to be made and it feels like it's a dead issue, could we talk about and show some of the script here on 83 Weeks in the future? Or is that against the rules?
No, I wouldn't do that. That would be highly inappropriate. It's not my work, somebody else's work. So me sharing somebody else's intellectual property would be really shitty.
Oh no, I want to be clear. I wasn't saying against their wishes. I'm curious, do you think, would it be possible for us to have a guest cameo one day and break down a scene or something like that? I think people would be interested, because I don't know if you remember, but several years ago a script leaked about a Vince McMahon movie, and they had a scene where Linda was a waitress in a bar, and that's how they met Andre. And it was kind of a weird deal, not all the way on the up and up, not exactly how things happened. But that script was at least out there, and I know fans would be fascinated by it. But again, I'm not trying to take away from anyone's creative genius, but if we could highlight a clip here in the coming weeks or months or whatever with the writer.
I mean, what I would have to do is talk to Scott Silver and get him to sign off on that. And if he did, I will. And if he won't, I can't.
So, no, I get that. I just think it would be really fun if we could break down. I'm not even saying a controversial scene. I mean, if that's what we want to, that's cool. But I just think having an idea of what a Hulk Hogan script even looked like could be interesting, because we've never really done that here before. And speaking of something we've never done before, Eric, I think even you'll be kind of excited about this. We started this discussion talking about this Randy Savage movie, and we all know how successful he was with Miss Elizabeth in the WWF, the Intercontinental title match at WrestleMania 3. The Mega Powers and becoming world champion at WrestleMania 4, the Mega Powers exploding at WrestleMania 5. And you just think about all the history that happened in the WWF. And then he did it in WCW and had great matches with Ric Flair, again, partnered with Hulk Hogan, a part of the NWO, helped make DDP, just a fantastic run through wrestling. But I don't think a lot of fans know that it almost didn't happen. He and his dad were promoting an outlaw promotion, and they started taking jabs at Lawler's promotion, the Jerry Jarrett territory, in 79. And it built to an incredible match, 4 years in the making, with all kinds of backstory. And we'll debut it next week on Jeff Jarrett's podcast, My World. We found the footage, and we're going to show that for the very first time ever.
That is awesome. That's really cool, Conrad. Good for you guys.
I can't wait for everybody to see it. We've got a little trailer right now, Eric. Check this out.
Coming up on the next My World with Jeff Jarrett, Jeff and Conrad will take a look at some unearthed footage of the very first match between Randy Macho Man Savage and Jerry the King Lawler from December 1983 at Mid-South Coliseum in Memphis. Exclusive footage courtesy of our friends at Ultimate Classic Wrestling. Classic Wrestling updated weekly at classicwrestling.net. Save 30% by using Conrad30 at the checkout. And join us at myworldpod.com. Like, subscribe, and smash that bell, and don't miss a thing.
Eric, we're excited because we've got a Memphis historian who's going to be joining us, Mark James, who's written more books about Memphis wrestling than anybody. He'll give us the context of what exactly the Poffos were doing and how they started really calling out. I mean, this is an outlaw promotion. Like, they're running newspaper ads, running opposition in this territory. And at first, Jerry and Jerry just ignore it. And then years later, they realize, hey, business is down. We need a shot in the arm. What if? And so this was not exactly the NWO storyline, but here you are, you have this outsider coming in, and people wondered, hey, what's going to happen? We'll watch the match together for the very first time next week, right here on My World. And I can't wait for you guys to go check it out. And shout out to the folks who found this footage and are allowing it for us to show it to you. Go right now to classicwrestling.net. Use the promo code Conrad30 and you'll save 30% off. But if you just want to check it out for free and see if you like it and want more of it, be sure to check out My World this coming Tuesday. I mean, how cool is that, dude? We found the first match ever with Lawler and Savage. It really made Randy Savage. I'm fired up for that.
You should be. That's really cool. And, I mean, hats off to you for being able to locate the footage and putting that deal together and getting somebody to jump on and talk about it with you. Because that's a slice of history you're going to be able to dive into that I haven't heard or seen anywhere else. So that's always a great opportunity.
Well, speaking of something you haven't seen or heard anywhere else, hey man, if you're like me, we've all had to learn the hard way when it came to maybe someone stealing our identity or someone getting a hold of our card and fraudulently making some expenditures. And then we're like, hey, wait a minute. What is this? That doesn't feel like that was me. What you need is built-in card security that keeps your money safe and gives you all the protections that you expect. You see, when it comes to your money, you deserve to feel safe from fraud and in control. And that's exactly what you can expect from Cash App. When you get the Cash App card, not only do you get a ton of perks and benefits like exclusive early access to nationwide concert pre-sales or discounts on popular brands, but you also have the extra security with the power to instantly lock or unlock your card right from your phone in just one tap. You see, if a suspicious transaction pops up on your card, Cash App has your back by automatically declining the purchase and sending you a heads up to confirm if it's you or not. And behind the scenes, you can rest assured knowing that your account balance is protected by 24/7 fraud monitoring. And if something ever feels off, you have the ability to lock your card right from your phone in just one tap. With Cash App, you can spend, save, and live your life knowing that your money is right where you left it, with advanced built-in security protections that you can count on and help when you need it. Spend with peace of mind today and order a Cash App in the app or at cash.app/card. And right now, for a limited time only, new Cash App customers can use our exclusive code to earn some additional cash for real. Just download Cash App and use our exclusive referral code at Secure10 in your profile. Send $5 to a friend within 14 days, and you'll get $10 dropped right into your account. Terms apply. That's money. That's Cash App. Cash App is a financial services platform, not a bank. Banking services provided by Cash App's bank partners. Prepaid debit cards issued by Sutton Bank, member FDIC. Instant discounts provided by Cash App, a Block Inc. brand. Visit cash.app/legal/podcast for full disclosures. All right, Eric. So now I'm excited to talk about this because, man, I feel like we've dissected the nWo forwards, backwards. By the way, what'd you think of the new theme music this week, Eric?
It was macaroni and cheese for my ears. I loved it. It was awesome.
I don't know why fans, and I mean, you and I love that song too, but it stands out above a lot of other. Like if I'm scrolling through social media and I hear that song, I almost become like Pavlovian, like, oh, that's the nWo theme. I don't know why that is, but I think that's really cool.
It's, I'm the same way with Stairway to Heaven. Whenever I hear that song, it immediately throws me back to probably 16, 17 years old, driving around during the summer in my 64 Ford convertible, Galaxy 500, chocolate brown, tan interior, white convertible top, chrome mag wheels, awesome car, 390 V8, glass back so it sounded good. Yeah, that's what that song reminds me of. It takes me back to those moments. And I think that's what songs do. They take you back to a moment. And I think the moment with the nWo and the way it came on, as strong as it came on, as overwhelming as it was, as quickly as it became part of pop culture, that song just brings us back to that feeling in that moment. That's why I say it's, people say macaroni and cheese for your ears. What is that? Macaroni and cheese is like my comfort food.
I see.
I just want to go back to like when I was a kid and, just give me some mac and cheese and a tuna fish sandwich and I'm happy as can be, right? That was my jam back when I was 8 or 9. And every once in a while I'll break out the macaroni and cheese. But when I hear a song like the nWo theme, beginning of this, it's like that comfort food for my ears. So I dig it.
Well, we're here to break down and examine why. Is that still
getting that echo?
Yeah,
that's why. Are you hearing that too?
Yeah.
Okay. It's not happening anymore. So here we go.
I think it was because the audio was coming through. I think we heard my playback on Eric's computer. Okay, I'll let you cover it up here. 3, 2. Well, what we're going to examine today is Eric's top 5 reasons the nWo failed in WWE. We know it was a bonanza for business in WCW. Clearly, Vince thought or hoped it could do the same for the WWE. But by February of 2002, well, it just didn't go according to plan. And everybody has a different reason why it didn't work. We've heard from Kevin Nash on his podcast. We've heard from Bruce on his podcast. But now you're going to hear from the guy who helped orchestrate the original nWo. Why didn't it work in the WWE? And we'll start with number 5 on Eric's top 5 reasons the nWo failed in WWE. And Eric, you told us before we clicked record today that it was a different audience. The WWF fans didn't want to boo the nWo because it didn't fit with any aspect of the original nWo. What do you mean there?
Nothing about, I mean, it wasn't set up properly. It's a little bit like the Cena Rock situation that we were talking about. It just started off wrong. The audience just wasn't, that had to be set up properly with the nWo for the story and the character of the nWo. If you think about it as just a brand, that brand represented anarchy, right? Turn shit upside down, find something to break and break it. And the way it was introduced, it was dead on arrival, to be honest with you. The audience just wasn't prepared. They didn't know how to react. They were confused. So the worst thing you can do to an audience is confuse them. Just the audience. What I really meant was the audience just wasn't ready for that story because it wasn't introduced properly.
I do want to ask, would it have ever been possible to bring these guys in and then be heels? I mean, at this point, they were all well established in the WWF. I mean, you had Hulk Hogan, you had Diesel, you had Razor Ramon, but also let's not ignore the success of the nWo. It was so impactful. It changed and helped create the Attitude Era. But specifically, it feels like anytime there's a returning star, there's always the big star reaction. Like whether they're a good guy, they're a bad guy, we're cheering because a big star is back. So with the nWo, the original version, we knew that they were here to be heels, but it feels like they're getting a hero's welcome just because, hey, we love these guys. We love the act. It's just.
Well, they love the act. Look, just because it was a WWE audience, keep in mind back in the day when there was, 4 million watching Nitro and 4 million watching Raw simultaneously. There wasn't really 8 million people watching. There was probably 5 million people watching that were bouncing back and forth and were getting tracked by Nielsen accordingly, right? So it looked like, there was double the audience, but there really wasn't. There was a lot of duplication in that number. And what the duplication is, we'll never know, or at least I never will. And neither will anybody else that's honest with you, by the way. But a large part of that WWE audience that night, when the nWo quote unquote invaded WWE, they were just happy to see the nWo. And because they weren't set up as heels, they reacted to them as returning, hey, stars, hey, the nWo's here, that's cool too. Wow, what a party. Who's going to show up next? There was no setup. There was no reason for them to react any other way than, hey, there's those guys that were so cool over in WCW, and now they're here. We got them too. Yay for us. That's the reaction you got. People were happy to see them because you didn't do anything to set it up properly.
Let's move on here to number 4 on Eric's top 5 reasons the nWo failed in WWE. Somehow Kevin Nash didn't even wrestle at WrestleMania. Instead, Scott Hall lost to Steve Austin and Hogan lost to The Rock. Boy, this is not exactly the way to introduce a new idea. Hey, they're here and they're taking over. Well, not really. We're not going to book them all. And the 2 of the 3 that are booked, we're going to beat them. This feels like the damn Invasion all over again. We learned nothing from the Invasion. Did we, Eric?
No, nothing. And I never really talked to Scott or Kevin or Hulk about what went on creatively, who was responsible for what and why, and what was going on behind the scenes creatively with it. I've never had those conversations with any of those guys. Certainly Scott and Hulk when they were alive, and maybe Kevin and I will talk about it next time we see each other. But again, I keep going back to the way it's set up, the whole Mr. McMahon thing. What? So you're going to do what? That was such a bad idea. I'm sure we'll get to that in more detail. The fact that Kevin didn't wrestle, my sense is that somebody had a really good idea in the beginning, and for whatever reason, it started falling apart very quickly. And then it was probably not long after it got started was, oh God, okay, this was a mistake. Let's get out of it as quick as we can with as little damage as possible. That's what I think you're seeing.
What's interesting is the suggestion. Well, maybe it wasn't a suggestion. There was a report by Wade Keller in the Torch way back when that said something like, when the first meeting was held with Hogan, Hall, Nash, and Vince McMahon regarding the matches for WrestleMania, Nash's feelings were hurt that McMahon didn't have anything in mind for him. The working idea was to do an angle with The Undertaker, but since both are heels and the match might be a disaster in the ring, making both wrestlers look bad, they decided to go a different route with Nash. Taker is now wrestling Ric Flair at WrestleMania. So I guess once upon a time we could have had Undertaker versus Kevin Nash. Maybe they were concerned with ring rust or conditioning or whatever, since everybody involved had been on the sidelines getting paid guaranteed money for years at that point. But that's what's interesting. Well, for over a year, almost a year. But I guess that's what's interesting is we didn't have that concern, if that was even a real report, about Scott Hall or with Hulk Hogan. I had always heard the rumor and innuendo was Kevin Nash was the insurance policy in case Scott Hall couldn't keep it between the ditches, so to speak, because we all know that he had some issues he was working through at the time. And just to hear, hey, we know you're the world champion and you were our world champion too, and we're just going to have you as the backup plan. I think it's natural that if you're Kevin Nash, your feelings might be hurt a little bit, huh?
If that's true, I don't put a lot of, it doesn't sound, it's not something I would buy into very easily. Doesn't sound right to me. But if it's true, of course, I just don't think that was it.
What would you have done? Hypothetically, would you have tried to, and I know that we're reverse engineering it now, and you don't, as a rule, love fantasy booking, but Scott Hall and Kevin Nash, I mean, we knew them as the outsiders. We knew them as Hall and Nash. When the NWO was at its hottest, you had Hulk Hogan as a single and those guys as tags, and they were running roughshod. And then you bring X-Pac in and he's battling for the cruiserweight. And it felt like, hey, these guys are after the titles and they've got great representation in every division. Would you have brought Hall and Nash in to the WWE as a tag team, or would you have tried to do the singles thing like they did?
I would have tried to do the singles thing. I would have. It doesn't mean he wouldn't have tagged them when appropriate or necessary creatively, but as far as building them and building their stories, I would have done it individually.
Well, we know that unfortunately Kevin Nash had nothing to do that year at WrestleMania. Let's take a look at number 3 on Eric's top 5 reasons the NWO failed in WWE. Start at the beginning. The opening promo. It almost feels like they're there, almost, Eric, to just have fun. I mean, specifically, you've got Hulk Hogan in the backstage area asking for Scott and Kevin to take a picture of him with The Rock for his son, Nasty Nick. I appreciate a little Nick Balea shout out, but in WCW, these guys were here to take over. They were the sworn enemy. They were attacking guys backstage and lawn darting dudes into production trucks, and the police were being called. And now, even though you're going to be my WrestleMania opponent, let's get a picture backstage. Is this too inside baseball? Or were they asking us to not suspend our disbelief enough? Why does this come in at number 3 for you?
It feels like, listening and looking at some of those slides, it feels like somebody was writing and producing this for cool as opposed for story and heat. It's like, yeah, there was a point in time when the NWO were so hot, they were cool. It was cool to like the bad guys more than any other time in history of professional wrestling. Name me another heel that in the course of their heel things were getting cheered to the extent that the NWO consistently did. So much so that the baby faces in WCW were, including the ones at the very top, staying to be specific, came to me and said, I don't know what to do. We've been taught to tell stories, ring psychology, we do what we do, but none of that's working now because the audience is cheering the heels. What do we do? It was a conversation like that. And it wasn't adversarial. It was like, oh, wow, this is different. What do we do? The NWO really changed that dynamic. And yes, it was cool. The NWO was cool and chilled and laid back about 1998, after they'd been around for a year and a half or 2 years. Before that, they were pretty vicious. Mostly they were dangerous, and that was the intent, to make them dangerous. Yes, they could do cool shit if they're dangerous while they're doing it. And if they're not in the act of being dangerous, then we have to be able to smell the potential and cut it with a chainsaw. Then you can be cool. But to just do the, hey, frat boy, bull, let's do, bro, don't bogey. Hey, can we get a picture, dude? That's how you're introducing them. There's nothing dangerous about that scene. There's nothing that's going to make me think, wow, I wouldn't turn my back on those guys. The way I saw that scene and the way you described it to me, I don't know. It's just like who was steering that creative ship, because they weren't someone who was really tuned into why the NWO even got off the ground in the first place. Beyond the obvious, oh, it's the Hulk Hogan turn. No, it wasn't. It wasn't the Hulk Hogan turn. Hulk Hogan turned because Hulk Hogan volunteered to turn and take Sting's place because the angle had already taken off and Hulk saw where it was going. He had enough of an instinct to realize where it could go, right? This introduction, opening scene of the first quote-unquote angle or act one, if you will, was just and that's about the best way you could describe the whole attempt going forward. All because of the way it opened up.
Hey, listen up. If you own a handgun for self-defense, your storage, well, it likely fits into one of two very frustrating categories. It's either locked away, meaning it's safe or it's out of reach in case of an emergency, or it's unsecured, leaving it vulnerable to anyone. Stopbox USA saw the problem and designed a groundbreaking solution, the Stopbox Pro. With the Stopbox Pro, you'll never have to choose between security and readiness again. Its ingenious push-button locking system gives you fast, reliable access when every second matters, without the hassle of keys or reliance on batteries. It's 100% mechanical, so it works every time, and there's no power needed. With Stopbox USA, you can finally have both security and readiness. The Stopbox Pro's mechanical keyless system allows for fast, secure access without the risk of fumbling for keys when every second counts. It's also battery-free, so you never have to worry about your lock not working, and you never have to worry about tariffs because everything is sourced right here in the USA. Stopbox even has their manufacturing facility here in America. Speaking of America, the Stopbox Pro, it's also TSA compliant. How about that? For a limited time, our listeners can get 15% off at Stopbox when you use our code 83weeks at checkout. Head on over to stopboxusa.com and use the code 83weeks for 15% off your entire order. After you purchase, they're going to ask you where you heard about them. Please support our show and tell them we sent you. Let's go to number 2 on Eric's top 5 reasons that the NWO failed in WWE. I think it's fair to say by this point in 2002, the NWO brand had been super diluted by WCW. Of course, towards the end of the run there, we had done every iteration, perhaps most forgettably, the last version, NWO 2000. And listen, great collection of talent, but it just didn't go anywhere. Bret Hart, Scott Steiner, Kevin Nash, and Jeff Jarrett. I mean, when I look at this, Eric, it doesn't even feel like the NWO. I mean, I know technically Jeff Jarrett was in it, and technically Bret Hart was in it. But when
I thought Bret Hart was Billy Kidman. Go back to that previous picture, Super Dave. I'm looking at that. I go, man, Billy's got a bigger neck than I remember. I thought it was Billy Kidman. I'm going, when did Billy Kidman join the NWO?
I think a lot of people think that about Bret. When did Bret join the NWO? Like, I don't know. Listen, I know it wasn't necessarily your creative, but it is forgettable.
No, it wasn't anything close to my creative. That was just dumb. Whatever.
Was it possible? I mean, listen, when you have a strong idea, an industry changing idea like the NWO, but it limps along to the point that it's just not good like the NWO 2000 was. Is it salvageable in 02? Could you have brought it back and put a fresh coat of paint on it, as Bruce would say?
You can always, you're only limited by your own lack of creativity and or patience. Could it have come back? Absolutely. Absolutely, it could have come back. But it would have taken time. It would have taken a lot of planning. It would have taken a lot of patience. You'd have to let it breathe. You'd have to let it go away. You'd have to let people mourn to the extent that they were even willing to mourn at that point. Most people were willing to just go, yay, finally it's over. But you'd have to get to the point where, to a degree, absence would start to make the heart grow just a little fonder, if not more forgiving. And then find a way to bring it back. And it would probably be a dozen ways you could come up with by tomorrow that would start to sound exciting. Sure, it could have, but nobody wanted it bad enough. Nobody saw the future in it at all. And if they did, they were probably looking at it very short term. Let's get a hot 3 months out of it, see what we can do. If it lasts, great. If not, so what? We made some money, move along. Let's do another one somewhere down the road. But it could have been resurrected.
When you look at that original crew that we had, Scott Hall, Kevin Nash, and of course Hulk Hogan, the other person I think about with that original NWO is Sean Waltman. Now, when they start this, Sean Waltman's already employed with WWE when these three guys signed in February of 2002. If you were booking this, would you have had Waltman join them, or would you have tried to stick with this storyline? Because that's what we're going to get to in a moment, is the way they were introduced. But it does feel like maybe Sean Waltman could have helped be the straw that stirs the drink in that group, because he's a guy that you could get the heat on, right? In wrestling speak.
Well, and he's also, I mean, I don't want to do this, but just bear with me, fantasy booking, for just a second. If the idea was, okay, let's bring in the NWO, don't just bring in the NWO and have them show up as the NWO, right? Have Kevin Nash come back to WWE, or Scott Hall, or however you wanted to set them. Let them dribble in. Let them come in one at a time over a period of a couple of weeks or months if you're patient enough and you have enough planning in place. And then create, if as best you can, kind of a natural, organic feeling, somewhat authentic. Create some scenes where there's a little bit of back and forth about, I know back in WCW and the NWO, you got away with that shit, but you can't get away with it now. Just that kind of adversarial dialogue somewhere along the way with a couple people. And then you just all of a sudden start, over a period of weeks or whatever, a couple weeks, 3 weeks, you start seeing Scott and Kevin and Hulk not calling themselves the outsiders, but effectively, as far as camera work and the way they're being treated on camera in commentary, they're kind of on the outside looking in. They become the outsiders without ever calling themselves the outsiders. And then let Sean come in and stir the pot a little bit and bring those guys back together again as the NWO, born out of the fact that there's resentment from the past. It's a Hatfields and McCoys, I guess, right? Yeah, it started out, everything was okay, but now they're going back to their old ways again. Kevin's being selfish. Hulk wants everything for him. He's not going to cooperate with anybody. Just build on the story that was told originally, or at least something close to it, but let that story evolve organically, and then it could have worked. That's one way it could have worked.
Well, let's take a look at Eric's number one reason why the NWO did not work in WWE. And I think this is probably the biggest reason of all. They were brought in by Vince McMahon as the quote unquote poison to infect the WWF because of Vince's feud with the other quote unquote owner of WWE, Ric Flair. This is literally the exact opposite of the way the NWO was created in WCW. They were here to take over and ruin WCW, and we needed WCW wrestlers to stand up to it. Now we've got a maniacal owner, so we're trying to, I don't know, transpose the Mr. McMahon character and the NWO and squish them together, and this worked for us and that worked for them. God damn, pal, let's put them together. Is that how we get here?
I don't know how we got there or how they got there. Thank goodness I didn't have anything to do with that car wreck. But I'm going to be clear. I have the utmost respect for the accomplishments of one Vincent K. McMahon. You and I would not be doing this podcast were it not for Vincent K. McMahon. There's no question in my mind when I say that. However, anybody that thinks that this guy was like the creative genius, Vince was good at picking out other people's ideas and figuring out what might work. Coming up with his own, I'm not so sure about. I never really saw that part of it. And maybe he was. I just never saw it. I did see him, however, filtering a lot of other people's ideas and then taking either one or maybe a couple of them and merging them and melding them together and coming up with his version of some of the things that were being presented to him, that's called collaboration, by the way. That's a good thing. So this is not a criticism. But what I'm about to say is, because no matter how smart you are, no matter how creative you are, no matter how much everybody thinks you're a freaking genius, you're still going to come up with some really stupid ideas. This was Vince's stupid idea. Whether it was his idea originally, and he just forced everybody to go along with it, or whether he took 2 or 3 ideas that he heard and he liked and tried to merge them and meld them together, as you said, and this is what they ended up with. Either way, it was stupid. It was really stupid. And it's the one of, I mean, you notice my top 5 reasons, they were all kind of interconnected. I mean, it really was the setup of the story, and now we're talking about the premise of the story. The premise of the story is ridiculous. Nobody bought into it. It didn't fit Vince's character. No matter how much he tried to twist and turn the character, and he's the evil maniacal one. All right, you can try to sell that, and some people will buy it. First 5 rows will buy it. After you get past the first 5 rows of ticket buyers, they ain't buying that shit. So it was a bad idea that only got worse in execution. But yeah, right out of the chute, it just stunk the joint up.
Well, we want to hear from you guys. Why don't you think the NWO worked in WWE? Drop the comments below. Let us know if you're watching here on YouTube at 83weeks.com, or just look for 83 Weeks on YouTube and let us know in the comment below. What are your top 5 reasons? Or matter of fact, what's your number 1 reason that you think the NWO did not succeed in WWE? Isn't it interesting, Eric, that I think we all agree creatively this was a failure? But boy, if you take a look at those merch numbers, even now in 2025, it feels like the NWO is always like a top 10 seller, even with a quote unquote botched angle in WWE. Respectfully, they're not selling those shirts because WWE knew what to do with the NWO. They're selling those shirts because you did. I still think it's, I don't know, unfair. Not that that's even a real thing, that you don't participate in that. That Hogan, Hall, and Nash participated, but it was your idea and you're not getting royalty checks on that. What the fuck?
Yeah, that's, when the original idea, when I came up with it and was involved in it, I was an employee of Turner Broadcasting. As an employee, especially as an officer, as president, I didn't get royalties on anything. I got a salary, It was a good salary. I got stock options. I got a lot of other cool shit that talent didn't get, but I didn't get royalties. And I didn't go over with Scott and Kevin and Hulk to WWE during the time period we're talking about. Had I been a part of that group, I would be getting royalties because I would have gone on board and gotten a cut of the nWo merch just like they did. But I wasn't a part of it. So I get to sit back and have Kevin tell me each and every time he gets a 6-figure check for his nWo merch.
Hey, I do want to ask, with the benefit of hindsight, I think a lot of people watching this, I freestyled, hey, it would have been cool if Waltman had come in with the group. But I think a lot of people maybe would have taken this more seriously. And I would even suggest that the number one comment for our video that we're recording right now for 83weeks.com is going to be Eric Bischoff should have been there. If Eric Bischoff was a part of this nWo, it would have had a greater chance of success, because then it would have felt like a real threat. Like at that point, you've not yet debuted with the company. So if you come out with them, now it feels like, oh, what is this? Eric's got his group. Vince has his group.
Let me ask you, Conrad, let me ask you, what was the date? When did Vince introduce the nWo as the
February.
February of
2002, and you came in January. Same year. You came in months later.
Man, they messed that up, because that would have worked.
Yes,
that actually could have worked.
Yes.
I don't know if it would. No, it would have worked pretty well, because I had a lot of heat.
A ton. People lost their mind when you showed up on Monday Night Raw.
Yeah, they would not have had the cheering problem had I kind of led them through the front door, so to speak, or the back door. Yeah, that's too bad. That could have worked, and I would have gotten my royalty check. That would have been even better.
And here's what we're talking about. You come in mid-July. So we're saying March, April, May, June, July. 5 months later, and this thing works.
Yeah.
It just feels weird. And if you'd have come in 5 months earlier, you might be getting those royalty checks today.
Timing is everything. It either works for you or it works against you. Damn it.
Well, listen, I got to ask, and I know we're not trying to necessarily bury anyone, but I do want to ask, were you approached? Why didn't you? I mean, as the story goes, they called, and by they, I mean Jim Ross. Is what really happened?
Jim Ross called, and that's why I was asking you about the timing. Jim Ross called me over the 4th of July weekend, leading up to the 4th of July, whatever it was, 8 months before, right? And I passed.
So 2001. So we're 4 months removed from WCW going under, and they call.
Right around the 4th of July, they call.
Okay.
I passed. 4 months later, 6 months later, 5 months later, they call, I go in. Right? Do I have that timeline right?
Well, I think you come in July of 2002. So they would have called a year prior if you're saying July of 2001.
Yeah, it would have been a year prior. And perhaps the reason they didn't call me for the angle, I don't know, is I'm sure Jim Ross let him know that I passed and declined, and not many people decline an opportunity to come to WWE in a high profile way. I've already talked about the reasons why I did. So I'm sure if my name came up creatively, somebody said, "Hey, why don't we bring him in with Eric?" And be like, "Screw him. We offered him a gig and he turned it down." Could have been that. Or Vince could have been so excited about him being the evil, maniacal, I'm going to bring him in to kill my own company. I'm going to follow a bad idea with a worse idea. The other owner of the company, Ric Flair, nobody's buying that. That's just not a believable story. Not to the extent you want to give people permission to suspend their disbelief without feeling stupid.
Yes.
Right? Flair, McMahon, competing owners of the company, anybody that they know, if they believe in that story, they're going to feel stupid. So it's just a story. You don't really care about it. It's okay, we'll watch it, whatever. But if you can make the story believable, it changes everything. But they didn't. They had Flair and McMahon, two competing owners, whatever that story was. And that didn't work out so well. So we're going to follow it up with an even dumber story. Something that is even less easy to digest as a story. Too bad.
It is interesting because I think a lot of people wonder, hey, why didn't the invasion angle work? And we've said, hey, because they couldn't get the big stars, but you would have made that angle better. You certainly would have made this NWO angle feel even bigger. I can't help but wonder if we could rewind time, what would it look like if you walked out with those guys at No Way Out? What could have been, man? Well, that's going to do it for Eric's top 5 reasons the NWO didn't work in WWE. All right, by now you've heard Eric brag about how important and how, I don't know, impressed he is with SIGNOS. I don't know that we've had a sponsor that has helped really educate and change the life of Eric Bischoff more than SIGNOS. And I want to drop some stats on you why Eric thinks it's so important. Did you know that 73.6% of adults here in America are classified as overweight or obese? Of course, I'm among them. 88% of Americans are classified as metabolically unhealthy. And global diabetes diagnoses are projected to reach 1.3 billion by 2050. See, here's what happens. When you eat carbs, your blood sugar rises and your body releases insulin to shuttle that sugar into your cells for energy. But if you're insulin resistant, well, that sugar doesn't get used properly. It lingers in your bloodstream. And that's when weight gain, fatigue, and long-term health risks start to build. Maintaining a healthy weight and blood sugar range can reverse this cycle, and that really is where SIGNOS comes in. SIGNOS packages together an AI-powered platform for deciphering unique metabolisms with a continuous glucose monitor, we call it a CGM, or a biosensor, and that enables us users to see how food choices, timing, activity, and even sleep can affect their bodies in real time. Now Eric has no doubt about what's going on with his body. He wears it on the back of his arm. I guess you call it his tricep, and he gets the data instantly 24/7. You'll actually learn which foods actually cause spikes. You'll get in the moment alerts when your glucose is rising. Plus you even get personalized suggestions like, hey, maybe take a quick walk. You'll finally understand the difference between physical hunger and stress eating, and you'll feel more energized throughout the day and even sleep better at night. You can get personalized science-backed support to reach your health goals. And here's a fun fact. We make like 227 different food decisions a day. And imagine how much easier those decisions could be if you had personalized data sort of guiding you along. I'm a believer in this product. My wife has explained it to me in a way that I can understand. I'm trying to do that to you guys here now. I'm using a SIGNOS. I want you to use a SIGNOS. And we've already heard from Eric how effective it is. Eric feels better than ever and has more energy than ever. And that's apparent with all that he's doing with Real American Freestyle. So if you haven't already, I want you to know that SIGNOS took the guesswork out of managing our weight. It's giving us personalized insights as to how our bodies work. They use this AI-powered app and the biosensor, and together, SIGNOS helps me build healthier habits and stick with them. And right now, SIGNOS has an exclusive offer for our listeners. Go right now to SIGNOS.com. That's SIGNOS.com and get $10 off select plans with the code 83weeks. That's SIGNOS.com and the code is 83weeks for $10 off select plans today. All right, so Eric, it wasn't all rainbows for WCW. We know that the NWO was certainly the biggest lift in the history of WCW. And Goldberg, man, he carved a niche out, and obviously DDP and all of that. But when we go back, I think we can all agree that WCW never turned a profit without Nitro. But Nitro was still trying to find an identity before we really established what I think most fans would settle in to become accustomed with, the NWO or the WCW formula. Like for so many years on Monday Night Raw, we knew that Triple H or somebody is going to come out and cut a 20-minute promo, and then we're going to get a match made for tonight and blah, blah, blah. It sort of became paint by numbers. On the WCW side of things, we would usually see a lot of cruiserweights in the first hour and set the table for some stories, maybe an A story and a B story, and maybe even a C story throughout the rest of the night. But when you're first starting Nitro, those early growing pains, man, it's not all a home run. You know, we're going to take a look back at 30 years ago this week and we've got our usual 3-man announce booth. Alex Wright picks a win up over Disco Inferno. It's a short opening match. Then we've got a taped interview with Hulk Hogan and Jimmy Hart. And Hogan is really trying here as we're getting ready to build towards Halloween Havoc 95. And he's talking about this nameless giant, because we haven't yet named him, as the big, mean, nasty, stinky giant. Then we see Mean Gene Okerlund interview Lex Luger and Randy Savage, and they're replaying their confrontation from the prior week. And Luger is really one of the more nuanced characters in wrestling at this point. He's not exactly 100% babyface or 100% heel. He was always a loyal friend to Sting, even when he may have been otherwise an effective heel. What can you tell us about the way Lex Luger was booked in this era, Eric? Because it feels like by 95, there aren't very many shades of gray. We've got good guys versus bad guys, as Vince McMahon would famously mock in 97. But in 95, you're really starting that he's a bad guy, except when he's with Sting. And you're only really doing that with Lex. Why were you willing to take that chance on him? Because that's a chance that a lot of creative types may not have done in wrestling at that point.
Because I was literally watching from week to week a new Lex Luger kind of unfold. That period of time when Lex showed up in September of 95 to 96, 97, it's like every time I saw Lex, I saw a different side of his character that I liked even more. And they were subtle. It wasn't like you didn't do anything drastically different. But his attitude, I mean, across the board, Lex's attitude backstage was completely different. He smiled when he talked to you, and he actually talked to you, not at you. He'd have a conversation as opposed to making a comment to you, right? Everything about Lex changed, and it also changed in the ring. The way he carried himself in interviews changed. I think, looking back, I didn't notice it this way then, but I think he had more confidence. Lex came off more confident, not in his character, what his look, not that. I think he just became more comfortable being Lex, and more comfortable in WCW, and maybe felt at home there for the first time. You know, when he first got to WCW, it's like, oh, the grass is greener, WWF. You're not really a big star till you make it to the WWF. We got to WWF, and it wasn't a greener pasture for him. It is for many, but it wasn't for him. And I think coming back to WCW probably felt more comfortable, and as he got more comfortable, he got more confident. I don't know what it was, not a shrink, but all I know is every Monday I would show up and I'd see Lex work, and I'd have more fun than I had watching him the week before. So it was kind of, let's see where this goes. Let's see what this character becomes. Let the character evolve and see what we can tap into, as opposed to the same Lex Luger character that we'd overexposed and WWE overexposed for so long.
Next up on the show, we would see Kurosawa pin Craig Pittman. That was a unique matchup. Mean Gene Okerlund would then interview Brian Pillman and Arn Anderson. Arn is a couple of weeks removed from his singles match on pay-per-view at Fall Brawl, and that was a singles match against the Nature Boy Ric Flair. And now you see Pillman laughing and mocking Flair's woo, and Arn Anderson's laughing at Ric Flair. Of course, we're setting up Flair and Sting to be in a tag match against these guys, and of course, famously, darn it, Ric Flair would turn on Sting again. Speaking of Sting, WCW Saturday Night was promoted for Sting versus Johnny B. Bad for the U.S. heavyweight title. That's unique because at this point, they're both baby faces. But I am curious. I know that you can't help but position Saturday Night, which has previously been your A show, as the B show. How much pressure, if any, was on you from TBS? Because we know Nitro's on TNT. TBS still has Saturday Night. Did everyone in the Turner organization understand, by the very nature of prime time during a weeknight versus Saturday afternoon, TBS has to be the B show now?
Oh yeah. There was no, Jeff Carr was, I think he was the program director at TBS back in the day and was the original kind of liaison between the network and WCW. He was our network executive, as I referred to today. And we'd hear from Jeff every once in a while prior to Nitro. He'd like to let us know that he was, keeping us aware that he's watching our numbers and all that kind of stuff, just doing his job. But once Nitro hit, I never heard from Jeff. Never. I don't think I had one conversation with Jeff Carr after Nitro hit. And everybody, it was by default, just scope of budget. I could shoot a 2-hour episode of WCW Saturday Night for about 120 grand, if that. And Nitro cost about 500,000 at the time, so, or 450. So just by virtue of the budget for it became the number one show.
Next up on the show, we would see Randy Savage in there with the Zodiac, and then eventually Kevin Sullivan would take over. Savage gets the win by DQ, but it's because the Giant comes down and starts attacking him. Mark Starr tries to make the save. Alex Wright tries to make the save. Even Lex Luger gets involved. Nobody's a match for the Giant. We haven't exactly announced him yet, but clearly he's caught the eye of Kevin Sullivan, who's enamored with him, which makes us think, oh no, he's going to be in the damn Dungeon of Doom. But at this point, you're on commentary saying this man has now laid waste to Hulk Hogan, Randy Savage, and Lex Luger. You want to talk about debuting a new character as if the size wasn't enough. Boy, knocking down Hogan, Savage, and Lex. Man, that's how you get somebody debuted, right?
That was Hulk, man. Hulk had an idea. He was passionate about it. He saw Andre and Paul, and he wanted to make sure everybody else saw Andre and Paul. So the creative behind that and a lot of what Paul did afterwards for a long time was really not formally directed, but heavily influenced by Hulk for sure.
Our main event that night is Ming and Lex Luger. And Lex Luger, remind you now, he debuted at the very first Nitro, and that was a few weeks prior to this. So here we are at the end of the month, and he's wrestling Ming in the main event. Most people would assume they know what's going to happen, but of course, we've just seen Lex get waylaid here by the Giant. Ming actually beats Lex Luger in the television main event. So it's a big story. We're really building to Luger versus Savage next week on Nitro. We're also building towards the Halloween Havoc pay-per-view, but this is at a time where we have yet to really fall into, I guess, what we might call the Nitro formula. When do you think, if you had to look back with the benefit of hindsight and say, hey, that's kind of when it really all fell into place? Is it 96 once the NWO's here? Is it into 97? When did you feel like, okay, this is it, we figured it out?
I started feeling it. I started figuring it out in my head, or just getting a different feel for it, probably by early 96, late 95. It started to, it's like I started out, okay, there were certain things that I wanted certain boxes I wanted to check. Story, anticipation, reality, surprise, and action. Okay, we won't go through it again. Once I kind of found a rhythm in terms of that formula, just watching the audience react over a couple of weeks and months, it started to give me the ability to even kind of fine tune just a little bit, turn up the volume on things that were obviously working more than I thought they might, turn down the volume on the things that I thought might work and that weren't really working quite as well, and just start fine tuning the show. By 96, I felt like we had a pretty good formula that I could actually write down and give to somebody so you could repeat it, change it up a little bit, but you could repeat it. I didn't get that feeling or that level of confidence until probably really about February or March 96 is when it really started feeling good to me.
That was still, of course, in advance of when Scott Hall came down the steps and the NWO started to take form. But as a reminder, in late 95, this is when the WWF was starting to experiment with In Your House. Their very first In Your House in May did a 0.83 buy rate. They came back for In Your House in July to a smaller return, 0.7. And by the time we're back here in September, this does a 0.4 buy rate. And that's kind of a big deal because that is going to be the lead in to the first ever live Raw. So this is the first time that Nitro, the show we just ran through, would be head to head against a live Monday Night Raw. The first week you guys were head to head with a tape show was Luger and Hogan on Nitro, and you actually edge out Raw with a 2.5 and Raw got a 2.4. So the first time you go head to head with them, they have a tape show, you're live, you get the win 2.5 to 2.4. We come back the second week and somehow, some way the WWF wins 2.7 for Raw, 1.9 for Nitro. But on week 3, you have those exact same ratings, but inversed. So now Nitro does a 2.7 and Monday Night Raw does a 1.9. But now that you're finally head to head, as we're talking, it was 30 years ago, the end of September, the last show of the month, they're live, you're live, and you beat them. And they're one night removed from a pay-per-view. Did that feel like something worth celebrating? Because I mean, the night off after a pay-per-view feels like more people are going to want to tune in to see what happened, but you still beat them here. Was that?
Yeah, that was a pretty big night. That was worth celebrating. In fact, I may celebrate it again tonight because I forgot all about it, but yeah.
I do want to ask, I don't know that you had a ton of experience with him, but it is worth mentioning that this era of the WWF, they have a lot of influence from Bill Watts here. You had spent a little bit of time with him here in WCW. Did you have any concerns about his, I don't know, approach to wrestling and how it could affect what they were doing? Or did you not really think that Bill was going to last in the WWE?
I had zero. I looked under Bill Watts's creative hood, and there is nothing there that works in that day's environment. We're talking about, late 90s.
Yeah.
Bill Watts, when he was functionally out of design by probably 1985. I mean, for a regional promoter in the South, great. He can make money. And I'm sure he did. But to play at a national level in prime time, Bill Watts was so just disconnected from the audience in television and what works and what doesn't work in television at that time. I'd seen under the hood. I knew what he had. I was not worried about it at all. I didn't know whether he'd last or not. That's a different question. But as far as, was I afraid that Bill Watts was going to show up and make my job harder because he's such a creative powerhouse? No, that was the furthest thing from my mind.
All right, guys, enter the room, Duke. First, Blue Chew isn't just a tablet. It's a cheat code for your crotch. Stronger, harder, longer lasting. Like somebody gave your downstairs a pep talk and a gym membership, Blue Chew is the original brand offering chewable tablets for better sex. Sometimes I take a Blue Chew to make standing in line easier. Yeah, gives me something to lean on. Okay, not really. But guys, we're not just talking about performance here. We're talking about your legacy, or maybe it's your third legacy. Give her group chat something to talk about. When you lay it down, they're talking about how it gets up. Nothing makes you more of a legend than a little Blue Chew. Go discover your options right now at bluechew.com. We've got a special deal for our listeners. As always, get your first month of Blue Chew free. Just use the promo code 83weeks at checkout and pay $5 for shipping. That's it. Join Blue Chew's mission to upgrade humanity one thrust at a time. Head on over to bluechew.com for details and important safety information. And a big thanks to Blue Chew for sponsoring today's podcast.
It's time for the Wrestling News Update with Raj Giri.
Welcome to the show, Raj Giri. Raj, what's going on today? How are you, man?
It's been busy, but it's great seeing you guys. How are you guys doing?
Man, we're excited you're here.
Couldn't be better.
Nice.
Well, listen, I know there's some news and notes going on. What's on your radar this week, Raj?
Yeah, I mean, the Hollywood Reporter every month they kind of release their streaming numbers over how the streaming services did the prior month. And in August, and basically since April, streaming has been outdrawing cable, combined cable and network outlets. And but But for the first time since April, linear share of viewing increased over the previous month. Usually it's been dropping from the month before. And streamers actually lost audience share for the first time since January. But as far as the top streaming services go, this is kind of where it gets interesting because it does involve wrestling. In terms of share by TV use, pretty much every month it's YouTube at the top with around 13%. Netflix is usually in second with 8 to 9%. And then you go down to Disney, 5%. And then there's kind of a big drop. You get Prime Video, Roku, Tubi, Paramount. And at the bottom, it's Peacock and HBO Max. And that's pretty much the case every month. Usually Peacock is above HBO Max. Usually Peacock has about 1.5% share. Max has 1.4%. This past month, they were tied at the bottom with 1.4% both. So even though Max rebranded to HBO Max in July, they're still in last place, which does kind of surprise me just because HBO has the years and years of prestige that goes along with it, with some of the greatest shows of all time, like The Sopranos, Game of Thrones, shows like that. But yeah, they're still down at the bottom along with Peacock.
Do you have any? So what was the stat on HBO Max? What was it average for the month?
So it's not an average. It's the percentage of the stream, the share. So
I guess that's
what
I'm trying to get to is it's their percentage of the total share of people, or their share, if you will, of the people watching streaming. And if since we don't know that aggregate number, right? We don't know that. That's a big question mark.
Mm-hmm.
It's 1.4% of what?
Right.
So
right.
And I guess and the only reason I point that out is because it's nice to have some data, and this data really all it does is give you a snapshot into where each individual streaming platform is on the food chain, so to speak, right? But it doesn't give us as fans or viewers any indication as to what that number in terms of viewers may be. What is if the Max universe is 1.4% of the total universe, and we don't even know how big the total universe is, that 1.4% number it's not worthwhile in terms of trying to figure out how many people are watching on Max versus how many people are watching on cable, for example, right?
Right.
Which is the dialogue du jour. That's what everybody wants to figure out and speculate about.
So as far as that goes, you have Peacock and Max that are kind of in the same ballpark, that same neighborhood, that 1.4 to 1.5% of total streaming. And it is really hard to get numbers, especially with simulcast, to see exactly how many people streamed and how many watched on broadcast or cable. But we did get numbers for the NFL opener on NBC. That streamed live on NBC, and that also streamed on Peacock. And that did a total of 28.3 million viewers. And Peacock and the other NFL digital platforms, so not just Peacock, but also the other NFL digital platforms, that accounted for 4.9 million. So that's about 17% with all streaming. It was about 17% of the total audience was streaming that first NFL game. So that kind of gives you that kind of 15%-ish is probably the number that's probably watching on streaming over watching on television. So, again, it is broadcast versus cable, but that is almost every number we see where we could compare streaming to TV. It's usually in that 15% range.
Okay, and then to play with numbers, if we were to assume, let's say, the average audience or the reported audience for any program, I won't name a name, is 500,000 viewers, you could then expect that the potential universe for potential viewers is, let's call it 15% of 500, so 75,000 viewers.
Mm-hmm.
Would that be like, if you're going to guess, because that's what all this is, without knowing what the universe is, it's 1.4% of we don't know. But just using the numbers as you're using them, you could assume that maybe if it's performing as optimally as the NFL does, and that 15% number applies, that perhaps AEW's HBO Max number is about 75,000 viewers, optimistically. Is that fair?
I think 15 on average percent is a pretty safe bet. 20% I would think is a high number, but it's possible. But 15 to 20%, again, as we've seen with WWE, when they're on FS1, move to USA, they're in about the same number of homes, but the strength of that network, at USA, they're doing way better numbers on USA than they would do when on the times they were preempted to FS1. So again, Max is a weaker streaming service. So, I think if they were simulcast on a stronger streaming service like Disney or something like that, it would be higher. The fact that they're on the weakest streaming service, again, I think 15% is probably around where they're at.
I know, like your favorite professor, and I know that he's your mentor, and I, whatever, talks a lot about availability, because a cable outlet is available in 96 million homes, whatever the number is. Just because it's available doesn't mean anybody watches it. If it's not a regular part of your television diet, the Weather Channel's probably got more penetration than just about anything out there, but it's not like a lot of people watch it, right? It's a service more than anything else. But the footprint is often misleading. People think the larger the footprint, automatically the larger your audience on a relative basis. It's not true. You can have a huge footprint, but if nobody's watching that network for whatever reason, it really doesn't reach any eyeballs.
Yeah, well, I do want to ask you, on the chart we were just looking at that showed all the different, the stack of all the different contenders and streaming services, YouTube was at the top. Maybe I should know this, but I'm asking, does that include YouTube TV? Or are we talking about the YouTube that you and I are on right now?
That's YouTube that we're on. YouTube TV would count as cable and satellite.
I got you. I know that some of our listeners are probably wondering, hey, why does the state of streaming matter from a wrestling perspective? And I know Eric tried to tie it back a little bit to what AEW is doing. Of course, we know WWE is on Netflix, but do you still perceive that streaming is the next horizon for other wrestling organizations? Like, would streaming be the goal of an MLW? Would it be the goal of a TNA? What is your sense of that, Raj?
That's where everything is heading, right? But it is kind of, people are creatures of habit. If you go to a sports bar and they're, at least this last season before the NBA, now they're moving, but you go to a sports bar, they're not playing the NBA games on Max. They're playing it on TNT, TBS, ABC, ESPN. And so I think when, all my friends, when they watch sports, they're watching it on the platform that they're used to. Now, the younger the generations get, the less they're using broadcast and cable. So it is shifting that way. And, 10, 15 years from now, I don't see people subscribing to cable. My kids' generation, I don't see them doing that. So it's heading that way. And it's good to be ahead of the curve. I think, when WWE first signed with Peacock, I thought it was the right move. It was kind of getting ahead of the curve, and especially with the network way back in the day. I know a lot of people thought it was a big mistake to go OTT as opposed to a linear channel, and it proved to be a very profitable decision. So I think ultimately it is the right way to go, and there is a lot of money still being thrown around for streaming. It's just still not as popular when you see the dual streams, when it's on television and streaming. For the most part, you're not seeing the same kind of numbers, at least for sports.
Here's why I think, Conrad, and I agree with everything Raj said. It's not that I disagree, but to add a little bit to it. One of the reasons, because your question was, do you think wrestling is the way to go for wrestling companies? I just interpreted that as new or upstarts, whatever. Here's why I think it absolutely is, and has been for a number of years. Because from a long-term perspective, studios, networks, ad agencies know that streaming is the future. As Raj pointed out, it may be 5, 8, 10 years, but eventually cable, we'll talk about cable maybe on a different show, but streaming for the last 5 years has been the focus of so many networks and studios because they know that's where the puck is going. And you want to be you want to be where the puck is going as close to the best time as the optimal time as possible, right? You don't want to get there 6 years after it's kind of hit its stride, because now you're playing catch up. So you want to optimize, plan, be prepared, and have your footprint as strong as it can be once we see that shift really start to happen. And more of your big programming is going to streaming. Less and less is available on cable. It becomes very localized, kind of the way it started out in a way. Whereas streaming will take over what the networks used to be. But that, as Raj pointed out, will take some time. Here's why that challenge is actually an advantage to an upstart professional wrestling company. Because networks and studios see where the puck is going, that's where they're investing all their money. They're taking losses. Look at how many out of all those streaming services, take out YouTube and Netflix. Ask yourself, do some research. I'll save you the time. How many of them are making money? The answer is none. But they're investing boatloads of it because they know they have to have the content in the library to drive that streaming platform when it hits its stride, not 5 or 10 years later. So all of their developmental, not all, a large portion of developmental money that used to go for developing new content for linear, some of it is being dedicated, a lot of it is being dedicated to streaming platforms. Netflix decided to go into live action. Why? Because that's where the puck is going. Are they going to be making any money at it in the near future? Fuck, I don't know. But here's what I do know. They know where the puck is going, and they want to have that footprint. Even upstart wrestling promoters could take advantage of that same situation. You're likely to get more of a license fee right now from the right streaming platform, depending on what their appetite is and what your offering is. You're likely to get more money from a streaming platform that delivers a fraction of the audience of the cable network who's not going to offer you as much money, even though they have a larger audience potential. So this evolution of streaming should be way more exciting for young producers and upstart wrestling companies or MMA companies or freestyle wrestling companies for that matter. You know, some of this is what I've experienced over the last couple of months.
Eric, I want to ask you, there's been people inside the tent of TNA for a few years now who have felt like we just need a better TV deal. And we saw Carlos Silva earlier this year sort of call a shot, say, hey, we're looking for $10 million as a rights fee. They're looking for a better network deal. We know they're sort of co-opted with WWE. Allegedly, WWE gets first right of refusal to match an offer. I believe I've heard through the grapevine. I don't know that this is necessarily a secret, but they are actively shopping for a buyer or investment. Do you think that they should perhaps adjust the sales a little bit and not be looking for a TV deal, but instead look for a streaming home? Is that the play for TNA?
Conrad, you won't remember this, and I wouldn't expect you to, even though you have one of the best memories of anybody that I talk to on a regular basis. But when you and I first started doing this podcast and TNA first became a rumor at Turner Broadcasting, I said to you, because you asked me a question that sounded something like, hey, Eric, if it were you, would you be interested or would you be excited about, TBS? And my response to you was something like, yeah, it's a great opportunity, but I'd be looking at streaming. I said that 5 years ago. If you go back, if somebody wants to go back and zero in on that time period before AEW was announced on TBS, go back and listen to the couple shows when that news first broke. You could figure it out if you really want to. And I talked about it then, and the answer is the same as it is right now, is absolutely. I would, if I was in TNA right now, I'd be excited to talk to anybody that was interested in giving me a platform, right? CW, absolutely. Sure. There's a party going on over there. If I can be adjacent to that party, I'd love to be adjacent to that party. But barring a situation like that, rather than taking what looks like a pretty good deal with a halfway decent cable outlet that isn't going to promote you no matter what they say to you, unless it's really part of your deal and you're getting something other than remnant, ad sales time at 3:00 in the morning on Tuesday. I'd be looking a lot more favorably at a good streaming deal that's got a bright future, as opposed to being a band-aid for a cable outlet that used to do really, really well and has good distribution. They're in 86% of the US or 90%, but nobody's watching them. And nobody's going to start watching them because you're there. You're just going to go down, hopefully, over a long period of time with a sinking ship, as opposed to planning for the future and taking a streaming deal. That's what I would be looking seriously at.
Hey, life happens fast. 1 minute you're driving home after work, and the next you see the flashing lights in your rearview mirror. Your heart skips, your hands tighten on the wheel, and you start asking yourself, what do I do now? That's when you need someone on your side. And with the Legal Buddy app, you can connect with a local attorney in seconds. Not hours, not days, but right when you need them. Whether it's a DWI, a car accident, a criminal charge, or even just a ticket, the Legal Buddy app puts real legal support right in your pocket. Imagine having an attorney on call, ready to help guide you through some of life's most stressful moments. This is not a call center. This isn't a waiting game. It's direct access to a lawyer who understands your situation and your community, and one who can step in right away. Think about this. When trouble knocks, do you want to face it alone? Or would you rather have the confidence of knowing a professional is already on your side? That's the peace of mind that Legal Buddy gives you. And here's how easy it is. Download the Legal Buddy app at legalbuddyapp.com. Register today and use the referral code LEGAL for your chance to win a $250 Amazon gift card. Life is unpredictable. Accidents happen, tickets happen, mistakes happen. But when they do, you don't have to go through it alone. The Legal Buddy app, always on your side. Download the app today and enter the referral code LEGAL. Raj, we're on the heels of a big wrestling weekend. Of course, last weekend we saw AEW present their opportunity, and you could do that on a traditional pay-per-view basis. It was the first time that they offered pay-per-view on HBO Max and, of course, Amazon. But this was also the maiden voyage for WWE and ESPN. Have you heard any response as to how ESPN received those numbers? Are they happy, or do we have any sort of feedback on that event yet?
Nothing at all. And usually you would get like some sort of press release touting something. And, with Netflix, it did take a couple of days before something got sent out. But, as of right now, we haven't received anything. And I do think, I mentioned this last week, we were talking about it. I did feel like more people would have watched the last WWE PLE on Peacock than ESPN, because it's going to take time for people to subscribe, get used to that service. There was a lot of confusion. So I could see it, not being a home run yet. I could see it taking time, but it is also smarter to be doing it this early ahead of time. So by the time you get to the Royal Rumble and you get to WrestleMania, you got the kinks worked out. Everyone knows how to get it. And then a lot of the people, that have Xfinity, YouTube TV, other services like that will probably be able to access it as part of their subscription. So my guess, unless we hear something in the next day or two, is it probably wasn't a gigantic home run.
Hey, Raj and Conrad, I haven't been paying attention, but there's a lot of speculation about how confusing it was going to be. WWE did a thing with Ron Killings, R-Truth, making it look so easy. So what was the feedback after the event? Did people have as much trouble as some people thought they would?
I didn't see that much, online as you would have expected. Like during the Tyson fight on Netflix, it was just people going crazy online over, their stream not loading correctly or freezing. So you definitely hear that feedback immediately, but you didn't really see it that much of people not knowing what to do to order it. So
maybe
or to get the app.
Because everybody was looking for that. People that love to, get online and bitch were definitely looking for it. I didn't see it either, and I didn't do a lot of surfing this weekend. But I haven't even seen anything today, and I was checking today. It's maybe a much ado about maybe our truth was telling the truth, man. I mean, maybe it was that simple.
Or maybe that many people didn't sign up. Respectfully, you know, the troubles that they had on Netflix for the Mike Tyson fight, well, it was included in your subscription, but a lot of people would have had to go sign up. I don't think there's a huge crossover. I know there is some crossover, but I don't think there's a huge crossover between folks who have Netflix who automatically have ESPN Plus. I feel like Netflix being the most profitable and maybe the only profitable streaming service for a long time, it feels like their adoption rate is just going to be available. And I know you say that doesn't matter, and I get what you mean, but Netflix is on so many more devices, I think, that would lend itself to that. Whereas this, even though it wasn't a pay-per-view, and Raj was correct in pointing that out last week when I suggested, hey, these are the folks who just said that PLEs are a dead issue and nobody does pay-per-view anymore, but this kind of feels like a pay-per-view. It's not exactly, but if you didn't already have that bundle of services, you did pay $30 last weekend. And I don't know if you saw, Eric, but I did see a lot of critical backlash. Raj, what do you make of that? Like, fans were really unhappy, and I felt like perhaps this was a coming out party. If you go back and you take a look at the very first Saturday night's main event last year, I think a lot of us had really high, unrealistic expectations. And watching the show, I realized, hey, wait a minute. This show isn't for us, the hardcores, or as Tony Khan might call us, the sickos. This show was to introduce WWE to a new audience. Is that the way you felt about WrestlePalooza 2, Raj, or what did you make of the negative feedback we saw online about the event?
You know, I think some of it is the lack of surprises. Wrestling fans, they love surprises. And so when you have a Royal Rumble without any surprise entrance, people instantly say it sucks. It was a disappointment. And Triple H before the show teased that there would be surprises at the show, and there really weren't any. So I think that kind of raised some expectations for some fans and brought it down. I mean, I thought exactly what you said, Conrad. It was supposed to be an introduction. I thought they did a great video package at the beginning. I was dumbfounded with how that Brock Lesnar John Cena match went. But the rest of the show, I thought was a good show. I thought they should have ended with that AJ Lee CM Punk match. But overall, I thought it was exactly what it should have been as far as introducing this product to potentially a new audience.
Eric, I do want to ask you, you know, when he touched on it, Raj touched on it, so now's a good time to talk about it too. The John Cena retirement tour, a lot of people were kind of frustrated with this past weekend. I mean, they had more press for this show than any show besides WrestleMania all year. I mean, they were all over ESPN to the point that last Saturday on Game Day, which is a staple amongst college football fans, before they picked football games, Eric, they picked, who do you have tonight, Brock Lesnar or John Cena? So that's about as prime time and mainstream as you can get. But then before the bell rang, we saw Paul Heyman reunite with Brock Lesnar, and Brock Lesnar pretty much just ran through John Cena. And I kind of thought and assumed the only way this makes sense is if in John's final match, he finally beats Brock Lesnar and overcomes him. And maybe that's the story, is that he'll beat Brock in his last match. But Brian Alvarez has come out and said that is not the plan. They've wrestled for the last time. And John Cena just took an ass whooping on his retirement tour. People are upset by this. You used to book for Heat. Eric, what do you think of that creative?
If the story going forward is as you previously laid out, and this ends up with John and Brock in John's final match, and John finally overcomes, it's a redemption story.
Yes.
I love redemption stories. They always work for me. If it's a Disney redemption story, I'll actually shed a tear or two. If there's a dog involved, I'll be a bawling idiot. So I hope that that is the case. If it's not the case, and it was just what they did that night, that would be worrisome to me. That would be worrisome to me, because look, I don't want to speculate. I don't like doing that. I don't like when other people do it, so I'm not going to speculate. But if it's part of a story, I think it'd be a great story, because redemptions always work. If it wasn't part of the story and it was just, well, here's what we're going to do tonight and why, not good. But we'll find out.
Raj, have you heard the rumor and innuendo that allegedly that creative was changed the morning of? Eric, I don't know that you saw this, but there was a report that said going into the show all week, creative had it that John Cena was going over. And allegedly that changed that morning. What do you make of that, Raj? Have you heard that?
I did hear that online. I haven't seen that reported, by PW Insider or Fightful or some of the other larger
credible. I'll say it for you. Credible, fucking
right.
credible.
Yeah, credible sources. But I just think it doesn't. People at this stage of Cena's career, fans don't want to see him getting murdered on his way out. Now, I agree 100% with what Eric said. If it's part of a bigger story where it leads to redemption, he finally gets that big win, then that's great. That's fantastic. But Lesnar's a made guy. He doesn't need this win. We want, fans want to see Cena play the hits on his way out, have fun with them, and then see him, go out as a hero. And just seeing him get murdered just is not. Just seems tone deaf to me, even if that's what Cena wanted.
No, I can't. No, just listening to you, Raj, I can't believe that this is anything but a story. Just listening, because you saw it. Listening to you describe it, I can picture it. I can't imagine that this is anything but a story.
I hope you're right.
I know.
I hope you're right.
Otherwise, the dark side won.
Right. Because they are going with AJ Styles next. I mean, that is Cena's next opponent. So
good. That'll be
seemingly fun. Moving away. So we'll see if they come back to Lesnar for that last Saturday night's main event in December. Then all that hate was for naught.
Hey, Eric, I want to tell you, John Cena, because I think this is interesting. As we're recording just 2 days ago, tweeted this out. I want to thank @Triple H for being flexible here and rewarding the true driving force behind hashtag Cena versus Styles, the fans. 2 posts, over 10 million views, and so many of you let yourself be heard. Hashtag WWE Crown Jewel, Perth, and @AJ Styles. You'll get my everything. Listening to our audience is always what's best for business. I'm grateful to all of you for choosing my next opponent, LFG. To me, that feels like there's some politics behind that tweet. What do you think, Eric?
No, I just think it's magic marketing. What he's done is he's made the audience a part of his journey.
Yes.
He's connecting with the audience in an active, engaging way that no other form of television can accomplish. It's just so uniquely opportunistic for WWE and sports entertainment. And that was a masterful example of how to use social media to advance your brand, your story, whatever it is you're doing. That was just masterful.
Raj, I want to get your take on the John Cena retirement tour. The only thing we have to compare this to here in America is the recent Sting retirement tour with AEW last year. Earlier this year, we had Goldberg in WWE. And if you want to go overseas, in recent years, we've seen Jushin Thunder Liger and Great Muta, and now Tanahashi on his own farewell tour. I feel like WWE fans have been more frustrated with the John Cena retirement tour than perhaps any of those others. Why do you think fans are struggling with this? Does Triple H not know what these fans want? Is he struggling with how do we transition John Cena out? Why are fans seemingly dissatisfied with the Cena retirement tour relative to all these others?
Well, I think a big reason is that Cena is the biggest star in the post-Attitude Era He is he's been the number one guy over the last 25 years, and I think fans just, even people that hated Cena back in the day, they want to see him get the big heroes retirement. And as many times as WWE has done these retirement tours and things like that, it's hard to say how many times they've actually really nailed it. And you look at their biggest legends, Hogan, Savage, they never really got that, really great send off. And so I think fans just want to see that for Cena. And you know, you had the failed heel turn. Right now, they're out of dates for Cena, which is why they're doing his build with AJ Styles over social media, because they're almost out of his dates. So, I don't even know if Cena will make any TV appearances before that match with AJ. Maybe one. So it just feels like not the most well planned out thing. And when it started out with him turning heel with The Rock there, it looked like it was going to be something huge, and it's just been kind of a disappointment ever since. And I think fans just expected more and really wanted to see a great storyline for Cena heading out.
Eric, I know I'm putting you on the spot here, but if you were going to give a grade to the Cena retirement tour so far, and let's pretend we're in school, is WWE getting an A, a B, a C, a D? What letter score would you give the retirement tour so far, creatively?
Well, the first thing I would do is check the box office and the gate, see how the revenues are doing, and you know, judge that against my expectations. Number one, but number two, just looking at fan reaction.
They tried the heel turn.
Yeah, no, that's a weird one. I think, you know, if I take that out, they're basically giving the audience what they want, which is a version of Raj's point, which I agree with. People want to see it's a hero's journey. It's the easiest story. It's the story that's been told more often than any, and the one that always works. It's hero's journey, and the heel turn attempt. It's like, yeah, maybe the end of the movie ended up being pretty good, but you got up and walked out mentally or emotionally during the first 15 minutes of the movie because it just didn't make any sense. And you kind of opted out. Didn't understand it. Didn't hit you in the feels the way you thought it would, the way you wanted it to. Just felt and it's hard to get it back. So I think that had a lot to do. I'd give it a C. Now, if you take the heel turn or whatever that was, take that out and just look at the rest of it, probably a B or a C, or excuse me, maybe an A minus, a B. It's been pretty good, except for the way it started. And maybe based on what happened with Brock, I don't know, maybe continuing. I absolutely agree with Raj. I think if they would have set up just give everybody what they want is to see the guy go. Everybody would love to see Babe Ruth hit his last home run. Nobody wants to see Babe Ruth strike out. You know what I mean? If you could go back in time, how many people would say, I want to go back in time. I want to be there when Babe Ruth grabs his last at bat, but I want to see him strike out. No? Same thing here.
Well, John Cena over on his Instagram posted a pretty classic photo where it's the guy pointing at his eyes. I'm the boat captain now. And I think the inference is he's going to try to put his hands on the steering wheel a little bit here as we wind down the retirement tour. And I think that's well deserved. Good for him. Creatively, though, at this point, can you still tell a story, Eric? Or is it better to just have a simple celebration of his career? Because we've got so few dates left, it makes it more challenging, right?
Well, we just laid out a great story here, right?
Go with it. Yeah.
Yeah. That. Could they? Sure. Will they? Probably not, because there isn't a lot of time, unless he extends his tour to include WrestleMania, and he ends up with Brock at WrestleMania. Yeah, that'd be all right.
It's funny you say that. Earlier today, Gorilla Position said exactly that. Granted, we don't know what John Cena's schedule is like, but at this point, extending his retirement tour to WrestleMania 42 feels like the logical thing to do. It gives WWE more time to atone for the botched heel run at this year's Mania event, and a proper send-off on the grandest stage of them all feels like the most fitting way of all of these greatest of all times, rather than go out at a Washington, D.C. Saturday night's main event. Raj, what do you think? Is it possible that we may see John Cena at WrestleMania again?
Well, they were looking to get, they're getting a site fee from DC for this match. And part of that site fee is based on it being John Cena's retirement match. So It gets tricky. I agree. Just from a fan perspective, that's what I would like to see. I think him losing, him having his last match on a Peacock special, it's not even going to be on NBC anymore, just on Peacock, just doesn't feel like the right way to go out. If it was on NBC, that's a little different. So yeah, I'd love to see that. I think WrestleMania, but again, it comes down to Cena mentally. Is he just ready to go? He's been doing this for so long. His body's beat up.
That would be the thing I would be like, because I saw a clip of John walking across the parking lot. It was one of those Hollywood Reporter type shots. It was B-roll. There was no interview or anything, but I was just watching him walk, and he didn't even know he was on camera. It was incidental in the shot. But you could tell I recognize that walk. I've seen a lot of guys with that walk, and it's usually accompanied by a myriad of other issues. So that's the real question, is how's he going to feel?
Yeah.
I do want to ask, Raj, as we're wrapping up this John Cena discussion, you mentioned that DC gave a site fee. Don't you also imagine that they pulled that lever with Peacock? Like, hey, by the way, if you'll re-up and give us a deal, we'll make sure it's not on broadcast. We'll give you the exclusive rights on Peacock, because they wanted a way to keep WWE fans sticky and not just abandon ship and go to the other streaming services, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, for NBC, with how much money they're putting into Peacock, as soon as that ESPN deal was announced, I think it was within a day, they announced the Peacock, the new Peacock deal, the extension, and they don't want to lose those customers because now the only reason to stay on Peacock is for archives for the next year or till the end of the year. And for these special Saturday Night's Main Event that you could watch on NBC. So by taking away that NBC aspect, you keep those subscribers, or as many as you can that won't jump ship. And it makes all the sense in the world for them wanting to make it Peacock exclusive, as opposed to streaming it also on NBC or airing it also on NBC. Because otherwise, I would cancel my Peacock, if I know these specials are going to be on NBC anyway.
By the way, little birdie told me if you go try to cancel your Peacock right now, they give you a deep discount for the next several months. I don't know how I know that, but we live to enlighten here on 83 Weeks.
Oh, I love that. We live to enlighten. I like that.
We greatly appreciate all of the time today, Raj. How can some of our listeners keep up with what you've got going these days?
Yeah, just follow me on Twitter at the Raj Giri, and also check us out every Monday night after Raw on Massive Heat on the Podcast Heat Network at Watch Podcast Heat Wrestling on Twitter. And we do it every Monday night after Raw with Matt Morgan and Jack Farmer. So check us out there. And again, guys, thanks a lot for having me on.
Raj, thank you, man. You smarten up our show. I appreciate it.
All right, take care.
See ya.
We're going to let Raj go, and we'll be right back after these words. Well, something you don't need to worry about either is saving money. SaveWithConrad.com can hook you up. And I'm talking to you if you've got credit card debt or if you're in a 30-year loan. If you haven't already gone to SaveWithConrad.com, I got a question for you. How old will you be when you pay your house off? If you don't know the answer, you may not have done enough planning. We want to show you how to pay your house off faster with cheaper monthly payments, and you don't need perfect credit or money out of your pocket to do this. In fact, the worst thing that can happen is you spend 10 minutes with us. That's your only investment. And in 10 minutes, if we can't help you, we'll just let you know, hey man, you got a pretty good deal. Just keep doing what you're doing. But what if we could save your family $500, $600, $700, even $800 a month? What if we could get you the cash you need to turn your house into your dream home with no money out of pocket? Wouldn't it be nice to get rid of all that credit card debt? Wouldn't it feel nice to skip your next 2 house payments? Who doesn't want to save money? Find out how much money you can save right now for free at SaveWithConrad.com. My attitude has always been, if you've got debt, it's up to you how to pay it back. Doesn't it make sense to pay it back at the best possible interest rate and the greatest possible tax deduction with the cheapest monthly payment? That's what we can do for your family with my family at SaveWithConrad.com. Get yourself a quick quote, even talk to a live person right now at SaveWithConrad.com, or email us, Conrad@SaveWithConrad.com, or call us toll free at 888-425-0105. That's NMLS number 2129, equal housing lender, SaveWithConrad.com. And hey, if your business targets men 25 to 54 years old, no better place to advertise than right here on 83 Weeks. You've heard us do some of the same ads for the same companies for years. Why is that? Well, because it really works. And with our super targeted audience, there's very little waste. Go right now to advertisewitheric.com and find out more about advertising here on 83 Weeks. By the way, if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button on all of our different social media platforms and on YouTube, 83weeks.com. Turn that notification bell on. And did you know we're at 83 Weeks on X? We're at 83 Weeks on Instagram. We're at 83 Weeks on Facebook. And now we're even on TikTok. Yeah, it's too sweet. Go check out Eric Bischoff and 83 Weeks on TikTok. And we'll see you next week right here on 83 Weeks with Eric Bischoff.